By the end of tonight, Ryan Caldwell would regret one word more than every other word he had ever spoken about his ex-wife: nothing. The laughter came softly at first. Then 3 people joined in. Maya Bennett heard every one of them. She stood 10 feet away beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Caldwell Grand Hotel, one hand resting around a glass of sparkling water she had barely touched. Golden light moved across the polished marble floor. A jazz quartet played near the windows overlooking Manhattan, while executives, investors, and board members gathered beneath arrangements of white orchids and champagne-colored roses. Everything in the ballroom had been designed to look expensive. Including Ryan. At 30, he wore confidence as naturally as his tailored black tuxedo. His cuff links caught the light whenever he moved his hands, and tonight, he moved them often. People were listening. Ryan always became more charming when people were listening. Some people simply aren't built for success, he said. A senior executive smiled. You're talking about your ex-wife? Ryan glanced across the room. His eyes found Maya. For half a second, their gazes met. Then he smiled. Trust me. I would know. Another ripple of laughter moved through the group. Maya lowered her eyes to the glass in her hand. She did not leave. She did not interrupt. And she did not give Ryan the satisfaction of seeing pain on her face. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below, and if you believe dignity is stronger than revenge, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Maya's story. At 25, Maya looked younger than most people in the ballroom, but there was something unusually composed about the way she carried herself. Her black dress was elegant without demanding attention. Her dark hair framed her face in soft waves, and the only jewelry she wore was a thin gold bracelet around her wrist. Nothing about her announced importance. Ryan seemed to enjoy that. One of the men beside him lowered his voice. So what happened between you two? Ryan took a slow sip of champagne. I carried that marriage. Maya's fingers tightened slightly around her glass. Only slightly. Ryan continued. I gave her opportunities. Introduced her to people. Tried to help her become something. He shrugged. Eventually you realize you can't build ambition for someone else. This time, fewer people laughed. A woman near the group looked toward Maya and quickly looked away. Ryan noticed. He leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to make everyone listen harder. When we divorced, I left her with more than she deserved. The sentence landed differently. Maya felt it. Not because it was true. Because she remembered exactly how many times she had once remained silent so Ryan could believe his version of their marriage. Across the ballroom, a waiter passed with a silver tray. Maya placed her untouched glass on it. Ryan watched her. Perhaps he expected tears. Perhaps anger. Perhaps one desperate sentence defending herself. Maya gave him none. She simply looked at him. Calmly. For the first time that evening, Ryan's smile weakened. Then the ballroom doors opened. A hotel executive hurried inside, crossed directly toward the chairman, and whispered something into his ear. The chairman immediately straightened. Nearby conversations began fading. Ryan turned. What is it? The executive looked around the ballroom. His expression had changed completely. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, we've just received confirmation. The jazz quartet stopped. Silence spread beneath the chandeliers. The new owner has arrived in Manhattan. Ryan quickly adjusted his jacket. How long? The executive checked his phone. 5 minutes. Excitement moved through the room. Ryan smiled again. He never noticed Maya standing behind him. And he certainly did not notice the strange stillness that entered her eyes when she heard those words. 5 minutes. That was all Ryan Caldwell had left before the story he had told everyone about Maya Bennett began to fall apart. The cruelest thing Ryan ever stole from Maya wasn't money. It was authorship of the life they had built together. 5 minutes could feel like nothing inside a crowded ballroom. But for Maya, it was enough to remember everything. As executives shifted toward the entrance to prepare for the new owner's arrival, Ryan disappeared into a circle of handshakes and practiced smiles. Maya remained near the windows, watching Manhattan shimmer beneath the night sky. Years earlier, those same lights had filled a much smaller apartment in Brooklyn. Back then, Ryan had owned 2 suits. Maya knew because she had ironed both before his first important interview. Their kitchen table had doubled as his office. Bills were stacked beside coffee mugs. On winter nights, the radiator clicked loudly while Ryan practiced presentations and Maya sat opposite him with a red pen. "That number doesn't make sense," she would say. Ryan would lean over. "Why?" Then she would show him. Maya noticed details other people missed. Weak projections. Hidden costs. Questions clients might ask before Ryan ever entered the room. Sometimes they worked until 2 in the morning. Sometimes Maya fell asleep with her cheek against spreadsheets while Ryan continued typing beside her. When his first major proposal succeeded, he came home carrying cheap champagne. "We did it," he said. Maya believed him. "We." It was such a small word. She never imagined how easily it could disappear. Promotions came. Then better suits. Then dinners where Ryan introduced Maya as "my wife," but rarely mentioned that she had spent the previous night helping rebuild the presentation everyone was praising him for. At first, Maya didn't mind. Marriage wasn't supposed to be a competition. At least, that was what she told herself. Then one evening, at a company dinner, an executive congratulated Ryan on a restructuring idea Maya had developed at their kitchen table. Ryan smiled. "Just something I came up with." Maya looked at him. He never looked back. That became the pattern. Her suggestions became his instincts. Her research became his preparation. Her sacrifices became proof of his discipline. And eventually, Ryan stopped saying "we" altogether. After the divorce, the story became even simpler. Ryan had succeeded because he was ambitious. Maya had fallen behind because she wasn't. He repeated it often enough that people stopped asking questions. Mutual friends became distant. Former colleagues remembered Ryan's version more clearly than Maya's silence. "I heard she never really knew what she wanted." Ryan tried to help her. "Some people just aren't driven." Maya heard variations of those sentences for months. She corrected none of them. There had been a time when she wanted to. She had drafted messages she never sent. Replayed conversations while lying awake. Imagine showing people old documents, emails, notes written in her handwriting. Proof. But one morning she deleted everything she had prepared to send. Not the files. Only the explanations. Because she finally understood something. If Ryan needed to erase her contribution to feel larger, arguing with him would only keep her standing inside his version of the story. So Maya stopped explaining. Back in the ballroom, someone called Ryan's name. He turned immediately, smiling as another board member approached. Maya watched him shake the man's hand. Same confident posture. Same polished voice. Same man who had once taken something they built together and learned to pronounce the word "I." Then Ryan glanced toward her. For one brief moment, he seemed almost surprised that she was still there. Maya gave him no expression to interpret. Across the ballroom, the chairman checked his watch. For minutes. Ryan believed the most important person entering that hotel tonight was coming to decide his future. He had no idea that Maya Bennett's past was about to walk into the room with him. There comes a morning when a woman stops asking why she wasn't enough, and starts wondering why she ever let someone else decide her worth. For Maya Bennett, that morning arrived without drama. No thunder. No triumphant music. Just rain tapping against the window of a studio apartment in Queens and the bitter smell of coffee she had forgotten to sweeten. 3 months after the divorce, Maya woke at 5:17 every morning. Her apartment was barely large enough for a bed, a narrow table, and 2 mismatched chairs. A radiator hissed beneath the window. Moving boxes still sat against one wall because she hadn't decided whether unpacking them would make the place feel permanent. At first, permanence frightened her. Ryan had kept the apartment they once shared. He kept most of their friends. He kept the professional circle they had built together. And somehow, he kept the story. Maya had been left with silence. So she learned how to use it. At 5:40, she made coffee. At 6:15, she caught the subway into Manhattan. At 7:02, she entered the Caldwell Grand through the employee entrance and pinned a small silver badge to her jacket. Maya Bennett. Operations. There was no corner office waiting for her. No executive title. No miraculous check arriving in the mail. There were guest complaints, broken schedules, inventory reports, staffing shortages, and spreadsheets nobody wanted to read. Maya read them. She noticed that housekeeping carts were being restocked twice because 2 departments used different inventory systems. She noticed empty suites remaining unavailable for hours because maintenance reports traveled through 3 managers before reaching the front desk. She noticed wasted food. Duplicate orders. Overtime nobody questioned. Small leaks. That was how expensive failures often began. Quietly. After work, Maya returned home, kicked off her shoes, opened her laptop, and studied. Hospitality finance. Operations management. Data analysis. Sometimes midnight passed before she noticed. Sometimes she fell asleep at the table. But each morning, she got up again. Not because she wanted Ryan to regret leaving. That desire had faded faster than she expected. She wanted something simpler. A life that belonged entirely to her. Months passed. Her apartment slowly changed. The moving boxes disappeared. A plant appeared beside the window. Then books. Then a second-hand desk. The woman reflected in a dark glass each evening began looking less like someone waiting for her old life to return. Ryan's name disappeared from her searches. She stopped checking mutual friends. Stopped wondering who he was dating. Stopped rehearsing arguments he would never hear. One night, Maya found an old photograph buried inside a drawer. Ryan stood beside her in Brooklyn, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling beside that cheap bottle of champagne. On the back, Ryan had written, "We did it." Maya stared at those words. Once, they had made her feel loved. Now they only made her understand how much of herself she had given away without keeping a record. She placed the photograph back in the drawer. Then returned to her laptop. A spreadsheet waited on the screen. 3 columns of numbers did not match. Maya leaned closer. She checked them again. Then again. By 1:13 in the morning, she realized the problem wasn't a clerical mistake. Something inside the Caldwell Grand was bleeding money. A lot of it. Maya sat very still. Outside, Queens had gone quiet. On her screen, the numbers glowed pale blue in the darkness. Ryan had spent years telling people she had no ambition. He never understood her ambition had simply stopped needing an audience. Maya opened a blank document. At the top, she typed operational loss analysis. Then she began to write. The report that would change Maya Bennett's life began with a number no one else had bothered to question. At 1:13 in the morning, Maya stared at the spreadsheet until the blue light from her laptop made her eyes ache. The discrepancy was too large to ignore. She checked the formulas again. Then the invoices. Then 6 months of occupancy reports. By sunrise, the problem had become a pattern. The Caldwell Grand wasn't losing money because of one disastrous decision. It was losing it through dozens of small inefficiencies buried beneath layers of routine. Duplicate vendor contracts. Unnecessary overtime. Delayed room turnover. Maintenance failures creating expensive cancellations. Nothing dramatic. Just millions disappearing quietly. For the next 3 weeks, Maya said almost nothing. She worked her regular shifts, answered guest complaints, attended operations meetings, and returned home each night carrying copies of numbers she was authorized to review. Her kitchen table disappeared beneath paper. Coffee rings marked several pages. Yellow notes climbed the wall beside her desk. Maya followed every dollar until she could see the hotel differently. Not as marble floors and chandeliers. As a machine. And somewhere inside that machine, gears were grinding against each other. She wrote 47 pages. No accusations. No emotional language. Just evidence. At the end, she added recommendations. A centralized maintenance system. Revised staffing models. Vendor consolidation. A new room turnover protocol. Projected annual savings. When Maya finally printed the report, dawn was breaking over Queens. She held the pages for a moment. Years earlier, she had prepared documents like this for Ryan. His name had always gone on top. This time, the cover read. Maya Bennett. Operational loss analysis and recovery proposal. She smiled. Barely. Then slipped it into a black folder. That afternoon, Maya requested 10 minutes with her operations manager, Thomas Reed. He gave her 4. Thomas sat behind his desk answering emails while she explained. We're losing significantly more than the monthly reports show. He didn't look up. Maya, finance handles that. I know. But the losses are operational. That made him glance at her. She placed the folder on his desk. I traced the pattern. Thomas sighed. Not cruelly. Almost kindly. You've been here less than a year. Maya waited. We have consultants for this. I understand. Good. He pushed the folder toward the corner of his desk. Focus on your department. Maya looked at it for 1 second longer. Then nodded. Of course. She walked out. No argument. No slammed door. No speech about being underestimated. She returned to work. 3 days passed. Then 7. The folder remained on Thomas's desk. On the 8th morning, Maya entered his office with occupancy reports. The folder was gone. She stopped. Did you review my analysis? Thomas frowned. What analysis? The report I left here. Recognition crossed his face. Oh. That. He looked toward the empty corner of his desk. I thought you took it. Maya hadn't. Thomas searched through several stacks. Nothing. Someone had removed it. Neither of them knew who. 2 months later, rumors began moving through the hotel. Men in unfamiliar suits visited after hours. Financial auditors appeared without explanation. Senior executives started closing conference room doors when junior employees approached. Then came the announcement. Grant Meridian Group was negotiating to acquire the Caldwell Grand. Maya read the email twice. Her first thought wasn't excitement. It was the missing report. She opened her computer and checked the original file. 47 pages. Still there. But somewhere inside Manhattan, another copy had apparently traveled farther than Maya ever had. And someone powerful had read enough to keep asking questions. Sometimes the person who changes your life doesn't arrive with an introduction. Sometimes he simply asks the one question everyone else was too important to ask. 3 months before the gala, Maya stepped into the service elevator carrying 2 folders and a paper cup of coffee. A man was already inside. Late 40s. Charcoal coat. No tie. Silver beginning at his temples. Nothing about him suggested that half the executives upstairs would soon compete for his attention. Maya pressed 12. The man glanced at the folders in her arms. Operations? Maya looked down at her badge. That obvious? He smiled. Only because everyone in operations looks like they're carrying someone else's emergency. The elevator doors closed. Maya almost laughed. That's surprisingly accurate. The man pressed 18. For several seconds, only the mechanical hum filled the elevator. Then it stopped. The lights flickered. Maya sighed. Perfect. You don't seem surprised. I work here. That earned another smile. The man leaned against the wall. Is it a good hotel? Maya looked at him. Most guests asked whether the hotel was luxurious. Investors asked whether it was profitable. Employees asked whether management was listening. No one asked whether it was good. It could be. His expression sharpened. What stops it? Maya hesitated. The elevator started moving again, but slowly. She could have given him the safe answer. Staffing. Budget. Management. Instead, she said, too many people are paid to protect the way things are. Not enough are rewarded for noticing what isn't working. The man studied her. And you notice? That's my job. Is it? Maya glanced at the small word beneath her name. Operations. Maybe not officially. The doors opened on 12. Maya stepped out. Ms. Bennett. She turned. The man had read her badge. If you owned this place, what would you change first? Maya considered the question. The way information moves. Not the lobby. The rooms? The restaurant? No. Why? Because beautiful problems are still problems. For the first time, his smile disappeared. Not from displeasure. Interest. The doors began closing. Good answer, Ms. Bennett. Then he was gone. Maya stood in the corridor for a moment before walking away. By lunch, she had forgotten him. Weeks later, her 47-page report vanished from Thomas Reed's office. Then Grant Meridian Group appeared. Maya never connected the events. Why would she? She didn't know the stranger from the elevator was Alexander Grant. She didn't know his company had quietly been studying the Caldwell Grand for nearly a year. And she certainly didn't know that 2 days after their elevator conversation, Alexander had asked one of his analysts a simple question. Who is Maya Bennett? The analyst found her personnel file. 25 years old. Operations. No management title. No executive recommendation. Nothing remarkable on paper. Alexander requested more. That search eventually led to conversations with department heads. Then financial records. Then, weeks later, a black folder appeared during a due diligence meeting. Alexander opened it. Operational Loss Analysis and Recovery Proposal. He recognized the name immediately. Maya Bennett. He read all 47 pages. Then he closed the folder and asked where it had come from. No one could give him a clear answer. That interested him even more. Back in the ballroom months later, Maya still remembered Alexander only as the polite stranger from a broken elevator. Across the room, Ryan checked his reflection in the dark screen of his phone. 3 minutes remained. Maya looked toward the ballroom doors. Somewhere beyond them, footsteps approached. And the one man in the building who remembered her name was coming closer. Humiliation becomes dangerous when the person delivering it mistakes silence for weakness. Back in the ballroom, the 5-minute warning changed everything. Executives who had been laughing moments earlier suddenly checked their jackets, straightened their shoulders, and abandoned half-finished conversations. Assistants whispered names and titles. Phones disappeared into pockets. Ryan Caldwell became a different man. He placed his champagne on a passing tray and adjusted his cuff links. Alexander Grant doesn't do ceremonial visits, one board member said. If he's coming personally, tonight matters. Ryan's eyes sharpened. Has the leadership structure been confirmed? Not yet. That answer landed exactly where Maya expected. Ryan's position was no longer guaranteed. Grant Meridian hadn't merely purchased a hotel. It had purchased the right to decide who remained inside it. Ryan smiled anyway. Confidence had always been his favorite disguise. Then he noticed Maya. She stood near the windows, untouched by the nervous movement around her. Ryan walked over. You should probably enjoy tonight. Maya turned. Why? He slipped one hand into his pocket. New ownership usually means restructuring. So I've heard. Ryan's smile widened. Operations gets hit first. Maya said nothing. He lowered his voice. I could probably put in a word for you. There it was. The old rhythm. First diminish her. Then offer himself as the solution. Maya looked at him calmly. No, thank you. Something flickered across his face. Before he could answer, 2 executives approached. Ryan, one said, we're trying to figure out who Grant keeps. Ryan laughed. Well, performance tends to survive. His eyes moved toward Maya. Don't take it personally. The executives followed his gaze. Ryan continued. We both know how things turned out. For a second, the ballroom seemed strangely quiet around Maya. Not because everyone had stopped talking. Because she had stopped hearing them. Years ago, those words would have sent her searching for evidence. She would have wanted to remind Ryan about Brooklyn. The proposals. The nights she stayed awake fixing numbers he presented the next morning. But the woman standing beneath those chandeliers no longer needed to reopen old wounds just to prove they existed. Maya tilted her head. Do we? 2 words. Nothing more. Ryan's smile froze. One executive looked down at his drink. The other suddenly became interested in the entrance. Ryan stepped closer. What is that supposed to mean? Maya's expression didn't change. Whatever you need it to. Before Ryan could respond, the chairman's assistant crossed the ballroom quickly. Everyone, please. Conversations died. The jazz quartet lowered their instruments. A security officer appeared outside the glass doors. Ryan immediately turned away from Maya. He smoothed the front of his jacket and moved toward the receiving line. Of course he did. Within seconds, he had positioned himself between the hotel president and 2 board members. Close enough to be noticed. Important enough, he hoped, to be remembered. Maya stayed where she was. Then came the sound. Footsteps beyond the doors. Measured. Unhurried. Ryan glanced over his shoulder once and saw Maya still near the windows. He gave her a small smile. The kind that said, "Watch how this is done." The doors opened. A tall man in a charcoal suit entered beside two members of Grant Meridian's legal team. Maya's breath caught. Not because she recognized a billionaire. She didn't. She recognized the man from the elevator. Alexander Grant. The stranger who had asked what she would change if the hotel belonged to her. Across the ballroom, Ryan stepped forward eagerly. Maya remained perfectly still. And for the first time that night, she knew something Ryan didn't. The most powerful man in the room didn't need to embarrass Ryan Caldwell. He only needed to walk past him. Alexander Grant entered beneath the chandeliers without ceremony. No announcement followed him. None was necessary. The chairman reached him first. "Mr. Grant. Welcome to the Caldwell Grand." Alexander shook his hand. "Thank you." The hotel president stepped forward next, followed by two board members. Introductions moved quickly, polished and rehearsed. Ryan waited 3 places down. Maya watched from near the windows. Only now did the elevator conversation return to her in fragments. "Is it a good hotel?" "It could be. If you owned this place, what would you change first?" She had answered a stranger because she had believed he was simply curious. Now that stranger owned the building. Ryan moved closer. His posture had changed again. Shoulders back. Chin raised. The smile he used when meeting someone whose opinion could improve his life. Finally, Alexander reached him. Ryan extended his hand. "Mr. Grant. Ryan Caldwell, Director of Business Development. I've been looking forward to meeting you." Alexander's eyes moved toward him. For 1 second, Ryan's hand remained between them. Then Alexander looked beyond his shoulder. He stopped. Something changed in his face. Recognition. Ryan noticed. So did the chairman. Alexander stepped sideways. Ryan instinctively shifted, assuming the billionaire was making room for someone. But Alexander kept walking. Past him. Ryan's hand slowly lowered. The room followed Alexander's path. Past the hotel president. Past the executives. Past the men who had spent the previous 5 minutes positioning themselves close enough to matter. His shoes made a quiet sound against the marble. Maya felt her heartbeat change. Once. Twice. Alexander was walking directly toward her. People began turning. Ryan turned last. The smile had disappeared from his face. Alexander stopped in front of Maya. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled. "Ms. Bennett." The sound of her name seemed strangely loud. Maya steadied herself. "Mr. Grant. So you remember me." The elevator. Fortunately, it eventually started moving. A few people laughed uncertainly. Maya almost smiled. Alexander extended his hand. She took it. Across the ballroom, Ryan stared at their joined hands as though someone had changed the language everyone was speaking except him. Alexander released her hand. "I was hoping you'd be here tonight." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. "You were?" "Very much." The chairman approached, unable to hide his confusion. "Alexander, you know Ms. Bennett?" Alexander glanced at him. "We've met." Ryan stepped closer. "Maya works in operations." The sentence came too quickly. Too eagerly. Alexander looked at Ryan for the first time since walking past him. Yes, he said. I know. Nothing in his tone was hostile. That made it worse. Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came. Alexander turned back to Maya. There's something I've wanted to discuss with you. Maya thought of the missing report. The black folder. The questions no one had answered. Before she could speak, Alexander looked toward the chairman. Actually, everyone should hear this. The chairman signaled for attention. Conversation stopped. Glasses lowered. Ryan stood only a few feet away now. Maya could see uncertainty forming behind his eyes. Minutes earlier, he had told this room she was nothing. Now the new owner had crossed the entire ballroom to find her. Alexander waited until silence settled beneath the chandeliers. Then he reached toward one of his attorneys. The attorney handed him a black folder. Maya recognized it immediately. Her breath caught. Alexander placed one hand on its cover. Before we discuss the future of this hotel, he said, you should all know why Grant Meridian decided it had one. For years, Ryan Caldwell had taken credit for Maya's work. Now an entire ballroom was about to hear her name attached to something he could never claim. Alexander Grant opened the black folder. Maya recognized the first page before he said a word. Her name sat beneath the title. Ryan leaned slightly forward. Alexander looked across the room. When our acquisition team began evaluating this property, the numbers suggested a hotel with serious structural inefficiencies. No one moved. We expected to find problems. What we didn't expect was to find the solution already written. He lifted the folder. 47 pages. Maya felt the room turn toward her. Alexander continued. This analysis identified operational losses our consultants later confirmed almost line for line. Thomas Reed stood near the back of the crowd. His face had gone pale. Maya looked at him. Thomas looked at the folder. Understanding reached them both at the same moment. The report had never disappeared. It had traveled. Alexander turned toward Maya. Ms. Bennett, did anyone ask you to prepare this? No. Were you assigned to the acquisition review? No. Did anyone promise you a promotion for doing it? Maya shook her head. No. Alexander nodded. That's what interested me. Ryan shifted beside the chairman. Mr. Grant, if I may. Alexander raised one hand. Not sharply. Ryan stopped anyway. Our team modeled Ms. Bennett's recommendations against 18 months of financial data. Her plan would recover several $1 million annually without reducing service standards. A murmur passed through the ballroom. Maya heard someone whisper her name. Not Ryan's version of it. Hers. Alexander closed the folder. That's why this hotel was worth buying. Ryan's jaw tightened. Then came the question he couldn't stop himself from asking. You knew her before tonight? Alexander looked at him. I met Ms. Bennett once in an elevator. Ryan blinked. Once? Once. Alexander's expression remained calm. I didn't know she was married to you. The silence that followed was different. Sharper. Ryan stared at Maya. For years, he had built the easiest explanation for any success she might someday achieve. Someone helped her. Someone favored her. Someone opened a door. But Alexander Grant hadn't known their history. He hadn't known whose ex-wife she was. He had only seen her work. Alexander's attorney handed him another folder. This afternoon, Grant Meridian's board approved the first stage of the new leadership structure. Ryan's face changed. Alexander opened it. Effective Monday, Maya Bennett will serve as Director of Strategic Operations. Maya didn't move. For one heartbeat, she wondered whether she had heard correctly. Then applause began. Not loudly. Not immediately. But it grew. Thomas Reed clapped first. Then the chairman. Then the executives who had laughed at Ryan's jokes less than an hour earlier. Maya looked at Alexander. He gave her a small nod. Not rescue. Recognition. Ryan looked down at the document in Alexander's hands. His eyes stopped on one section. Alexander noticed. Business development will remain during the transition. Ryan exhaled. Then Alexander finished. But its operational initiatives will be reviewed through Ms. Bennett's office. Ryan's relief vanished. Maya finally looked at him. She could have smiled. She didn't. She could have reminded him what he'd said. She didn't. Nothing was more complete than letting the truth stand without decoration. Minutes earlier, Ryan had told everyone she was nothing. Now her name sat at the top of the structure that would help decide his future. And Maya hadn't needed to destroy him. She had only needed to stop disappearing. Ryan Caldwell had spent years believing Maya would eventually look back at him. He never imagined the day would come when she could walk away without needing him to watch. The applause faded slowly. People returned to their conversations, but the ballroom no longer felt the same. Executives who had barely noticed Maya earlier now approached with congratulations. Board members introduced themselves. Thomas Reed apologized quietly for dismissing her report. Maya accepted each word with the same calm expression. No victory speech. No performance. Across the room, Ryan watched. He didn't approach her until the gala was nearly over. Maya had stepped into the quieter hallway outside the ballroom when she heard his voice. Maya. She stopped. Ryan stood beneath the warm wall lights, his jacket unbuttoned now, his polished confidence finally showing cracks. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Ryan gave a small laugh. You could have told me. Maya looked at him. Told you what? About Grant. The report. The position. His voice carried something unfamiliar. Not anger. Confusion. As though Maya had violated some agreement requiring her life to remain understandable to him. You knew this was happening tonight? No. Ryan searched her face. But you knew what you were becoming. Maya was silent. That sentence reached somewhere deeper than the insults. Because there had once been a version of her who would have wanted desperately to hear Ryan acknowledge her growth. She might have mistaken those words for closure. Tonight, they sounded different. Small. Late. Ryan stepped closer. Why didn't you ever tell me? Maya studied the man she had once loved. She remembered Brooklyn. Cheap champagne. 2 suits. A kitchen table covered in papers. She remembered believing that helping someone rise meant they would remember who stood beside them before anyone applauded. Ryan hadn't remembered. And somehow, that no longer hurt. I wasn't becoming anything for you. The words were quiet. Ryan's expression changed. Maya. She walked toward the elevators. He followed 2 steps behind. I never said you weren't talented. Maya pressed the button. You told an entire ballroom I was nothing. Ryan stopped. The elevator bell sounded. The doors opened. Alexander Grant stood inside with 2 members of his team. He saw Maya. Then Ryan. Alexander said nothing. He simply placed one hand against the elevator door to keep it open. Maya looked back once. Ryan seemed smaller beneath the hallway lights. Not because she had humiliated him. Not because Alexander Grant had defeated him. Because for the first time, Ryan was standing inside a world where Maya's value existed completely independent of his opinion. "I'm sorry," he said. Maybe he meant it. Maya didn't need to decide tonight. She gave him a small nod. Not forgiveness. Not punishment. Acknowledgement. Then she stepped into the elevator. Alexander released the door. As it began to close, Maya caught one final glimpse of Ryan standing alone in the hallway. The doors met. Silence. Maya looked at her reflection in the mirrored wall. For years, she had imagined justice as Ryan finally understanding what he lost. She understood now that justice was something quieter. Monday morning would come. There would be meetings. Problems. Long nights. 47-page reports nobody wanted to read until someone finally did. Her life hadn't become perfect. It had simply become hers. Alexander glanced toward her. "Ready, Miss Bennett?" Maya smiled. "Yes." The elevator descended. Outside, Manhattan burned gold against the night. Ryan had once told everyone she was nothing. Maya never needed to prove him wrong. She only needed to stop believing him. She didn't win him back. She won herself.